Having been cuffed and battered into submission more quickly than would have been possible 3 weeks earlier, Murdoch now stood sullenly surveying the man who, though he dressed like a beaker trader, persisted in using a language Ross did not know. "We do not play as children here." At last the man spoke words Ross could understand. "You will answer me or else others shall ask the questions," and less gently. "I say to you now, who are you and from where do you come?" For a moment Ross glowered across the table at him, his inbred antagonism to authority aroused by that contemptuous demand, but then common sense cautioned. His initial introduction to this village had left him bruised and with one of his headaches. There was no reason to let them beat him until he was in no shape to make a break for freedom when and if there was an opportunity. "I am Rosa of the Traders," he returned, eyeing the man with a carefully measured stare. "I came into this land in search of my kinsmen who were taken by raiders in the night." The man, who sat on a stool by the table, smiled slowly. Again he spoke in the strange tongue, and Ross merely stared stolidly back. His words were short and explosive sounding, and the man's smile faded, his annoyance grew as he continued to speak. One of Ross's 2 guards ventured to interrupt, using the beaker language. "From where did you come?" He was a quiet-faced, slender man, not like his companion, who had roped Murdoch from behind and was of the bully breed, able to subdue Ross's wildcat resistance in a very short struggle. "I came to this land from the south," Ross answered, "after the manner of my people. This is a new land with furs and the golden tears of the sun to be gathered and bartered. The traders move in peace, and their hands are raised against no man. Yet in the darkness there came those who would slay without profit, for what reason I have no knowing." The quiet man continued the questioning and Ross answered fully with details of the past of one Rosa, a beaker merchant. Yes, he was from the south. His father was Gertie, who had a trading post in the warm lands along the Big River. This was Rosa's first trip to open new territory. He had come with his father's blood brother, Asha, who was a noted far voyager, and it was an honor to be chosen as donkey leader for such a one as Asha. With Asha had been Macna, one who was also a far trader, though not as noted as Asha. Of a certainty, Asha was of his own race. Ross blinked at that question. One need only to look upon him to know that he was of trader blood and no uncivilized woods runner. How long had he known Asha? Ross shrugged. Asha had come to his father's post the winter before and had stayed with them through the cold season. Gertie and Asha had mingled blood after he pulled Gertie free from the river in flood. Asha had lost his boat and trade goods in that rescue, so Gertie had made good his loss this year. Detail by detail he gave the story. In spite of the fact that he provided these details glibly, sure that they were true, Ross continued to be haunted by an odd feeling that he was indeed reciting a tale of adventure which had happened long ago and to someone else. Perhaps that pain in his head made him think of these events as very colorless and far away. It would seem, the quiet man turned to the one behind the table, that this is indeed one Rosa, a beaker trader. But the man looked impatient, angry. He made a sign to the other guard, who turned Ross around roughly and sent him toward the door with a shove. Once again the leader gave an order in his own language, adding a few words more with a stinging snap that might have been a threat or a warning. Ross was thrust into a small room with a hard floor and not even a skin rug to serve as a bed. Since the quiet man had ordered the removal of the ropes from Ross's arms, he leaned against the wall, rubbing the pain of returning circulation away from his wrists and trying to understand what had happened to him and where he was. Having spied upon it from the heights, he knew it wasn't an ordinary trading station, and he wanted to know what they did here. Also, somewhere in this village he hoped to find Asha and Macna. At the end of the day his captors opened the door only long enough to push inside a bowl and a small jug. He felt for those in the dusk, dipping his fingers into a lukewarm mush of meal and drinking the water from the jug avidly. His headache dulled, and from experience Ross knew that this bout was almost over. If he slept, he would waken with a clearer mind and no pain. Knowing he was very tired, he took the precaution of curling up directly in front of the door so that no one could enter without arousing him. It was still dark when he awoke with a curious urgency remaining from a dream he could not remember. Ross sat up, flexing his arms and shoulders to combat the stiffness which had come with his cramped sleep. He could not rid himself of a feeling that there was something to be done and that time was his enemy. Asha. Gratefully he seized on that. He must find Asha and Magna, for the three of them could surely discover a way to get out of this village. That was what was so important. He had been handled none too gently, and they were holding him a prisoner. But Ross believed that this was not the worst which could happen to him here, and he must be free before the worst did come. The question was, how could he escape? His bow and dagger were gone, and he did not even have his long cloak pin for a weapon, since he had given that to Frigga. Running his hands over his body, Ross inventoried what remained of his clothing and possessions. He unfastened the bronze chain belt still buckled in his kilt tunic, swinging the length speculatively in one hand. A masterpiece of craftsmanship, it consisted of patterned plates linked together with a series of 5 finely wrought chains and a front buckle in the form of a lion's head, its protruding tongue serving as a hook to support a dagger sheath. Its weight promised a weapon of sorts, which when added to the element of surprise might free him. By rights they would be expecting him to produce some opposition, however. It was well known that only the best fighters, the shrewdest minds, followed the traitor's roads. It was a proud thing to be a traitor in the wilderness, a thought that warmed Ross now as he waited in the dark for what luck and Babal of the Bright Horns would send. Were he ever to return to Gertie's post, Babal, whose boat rode across the sky from dawn to dusk, would have a fine ox, jars of the first brewing, and sweet-smelling amber laid upon his altar. Ross had patience which he had learned from the mixed heritage of his two pasts, the real and the false graft. He could wait as he had waited many times before, quiet, and with outward ease, for the right moment to come. It came now with footsteps ringing sharply, halting before his cell door. With the noiseless speed of a hunting cat, Ross flung himself from behind the door to a wall, where he would be hidden from the newcomer for that necessary instant or two. If his attack was to be successful, it must occur inside the room. He heard the sound of a bar being slid out of its brackets, and he poised himself, the belt rippling from his right hand. The door was opening inward, and a man stood silhouetted against the outer light. He muttered, looking toward the corner where Ross had thrown his single garment in a roll which might just resemble, for the needed second or two, a man curled in slumber. The man in the doorway took the bait, coming forward far enough for Ross to send the door slamming shut as he himself sprang with the belt aimed for the other's head. There was a startled cry, cut off in the middle as the belt plates met flesh and bone in a crushing force. Luck was with him. Ross caught up his kilt and belted it around him after he had made a hurried examination of the body now lying at his feet. He was not sure that the man was dead, but at any rate he was completely unconscious. Ross stripped off the man's cloak, located his dagger, freed it from the belt hook, and snapped it on his own. Then inch by inch Ross edged open the door, peering through the crack. As far as he could see, the hall was empty, so he jerked the portal open, and dagger in hand, sprang out, ready for attack. He closed the door, slipping the bar back into its brackets. If the man inside revived and pounded for attention, his own friends might think it was Ross and delay investigating. But the escape from the cell was the easiest part of what he planned to do, as Ross well knew. To find Asha and Magna in this maze of rooms occupied by the enemy was far more difficult. Although he had no idea in which of the village buildings they might be confined, this one was the largest and seemed to be the headquarters of the chief men, which meant it could also serve as their prison.